right, great. So I took this class, this exact class, in 2011. I usually sat in like the back kind of right corner over there. And I will say that it was probably one of the first kind of aha moments for me of falling in love with startups and with entrepreneurship. I'll tell you a little bit more about it in a second, but I just want you to kind of just take a moment and appreciate how cool it is that you get to sit in a class and earn course credits to just hear from startup founders and entrepreneurs and people. I think I'm one of the least impressive people that you'll be hearing from this semester, but you should just know that it's a super cool thing, and take advantage of any story that speaks to you or touches your heart in some way. Get to know the person who's telling that story, and I'm sure you won't regret it. Cool. Okay, so a couple disclaimers. I am not a founder. I think most of the folks you'll be hearing from this semester are founders. Oh, not true. Maybe
Mixed.
true.
Mixed.
Perhaps true. Mixed. I'm not a founder, but I consider myself to be an entrepreneur. I'll talk a little bit about why I think that is. I've always worked for companies that existed before I joined them. But I believe there's a way to be an entrepreneur within organizations at any size. So I'll talk a little bit about that, but I think there's many ways of being an entrepreneur. The second disclaimer is that I don't believe in giving advice. I think everyone has a unique story and journey and reality, and what might have worked for me or what might have not worked for me doesn't necessarily apply to each of you. So what I'll try to do today is not give you advice, but more just tell you my few stories that shaped my career thus far, and some of the learnings that I had from it. And if they speak to you, please run with them, but take almost everything that you hear today with many, many grains of salt. Okay. Great. I wanted to start with, what are my learnings from Berkeley? Like, after it's been about 12 years since I left this campus. What did I take away? Well, first, I have a cool vintage Cal shirt over there, so I got that. But I think the first thing I took away was resilience and hustle. I think, a lot of folks compare Berkeley and Stanford, right? And what I think is unique about Berkeley is actually how not spoon-fed we are as students here. I think much of the journey at Cal is hard. Partially by design, partially not by design, but I think it's one of the most powerful things that is not in a coursework or in a curriculum here that you get as a student, is just this kind of like tough to navigate big organization thing that is UC Berkeley. As much as I love the school, it's hard to navigate sometimes, but years after graduating, I realized like a lot of the scar tissue and repetitions I got under my belt during the years of just navigating Berkeley actually boded really well for me in my career. The second was the power of being surrounded by brilliant people and learning alongside them and learning from them. I think this is a great example of a class that is mixed with a lot of different types of students. So let me just get a raise of hands. How many of you are engineers? Take a look around. How many of you are business students? Take a look around. Business students, the engineers are your co-founders. How many of you are economics majors? Political science? Political economy? I was a political economy major, so there you go. But I think what's cool about it is like it's an interdisciplinary group of people, and it's rare to be in environments where you're just surrounded by people who are studying completely different things than you. And I personally believe that the magic of anything in life, the magic of startups, the magic of just aha moments happen at the intersection of these disciplines. So I would just encourage you to spend as much time together as you can. The third one is I really learned how to make a big place like UC Berkeley feel small. This was true for me. Most of my life until I got to Cal, I went to small schools my whole life. And so I didn't really understand what it meant to just be another number in a classroom. I always had to get to know my teacher. I always had to show up to office hours and kind of interact with them. And so I didn't really turn that off when I got to a huge school like Berkeley. What is it now, 45,000 students across undergrad and grad?
Yeah, I mean, actually, you're welcome to sit or stand more.
Yeah, no, I think I'll stand. I think I'll stand. Cool, middle's good. So, you know, I learned what it took to just make a place like this, a lecture hall like this, feel small and get to know the professor and get to know my classmates. And so that was really useful for me, especially when I got to bigger companies like Amazon, where it can feel daunting to be one of a million employees, which was the reality when I was there. The last is just a love of startups. I always say this, but when I had friends at other schools where they'll guest lecturers were, you know, CEOs of Fortune 500 companies or Fortune 100 companies, our guest lecturers were startup founders or just entrepreneurs who were just right down the road here. And so this university, this geography in the world celebrates entrepreneurship, celebrates startups, celebrates disruption and kind of challenging the status quo in the way things are. And I was just really lucky to be kind of exposed to that in my early days here at Cal, and it's a love that I continue with to this day. Does anyone have a story? I'm going to ask the question. Does anyone have a story of any of these kind of learnings that they've already felt during their time here? How about resilience?
I think rejection from a lot of things has led to resilience.
Rejection from a lot of things at Cal?
Yeah.
Cool.
And just in general, like outside too.
Rejection in general, but also at Cal has led to resilience?
There was this really cool class being offered during my freshman year called Patent Strategy and Law for Startups, taught by Jeffrey Schwartz, who wrote some really cool patents for Coinbase and Twilio. And the class was only for master's students and upperclassmen, so juniors, seniors, and master's students. But I saw the class, and I went anyways. I went to the first lecture. I was the only freshman in the class, except for one other guy. I thought the class, like from the first lecture, I knew that it was going to be information dense and that it was going to be like very valuable. So I talked to the TA. I said, how can I still like be in this class even though I'm a freshman? And at the time, I was building an app. And what I ended up doing was I took what he was teaching from the first lecture and I applied that to the app I was building. I wrote it down in an email, and then I emailed that to him. And I just kept asking every week, can I just be in the class? I just kept showing up. And then eventually, he's like, I'm sold. Like, you're in the class. And then I got an A- in the class. I wrote a patent by the end of it. So resilience, hustle, showing up.
Amazing. So for those of you who couldn't hear, and I'll just try to summarize it. What's your name, by the way? Josh. So Josh was saying that it was only a grad school class or upper div class. So upper div or grad school class that was being offered. It was a patent and law class. He was a freshman, and he kept showing up, and he basically rejected the premise that this class wasn't for him. And I think that is a lot of it. It's not accepting what you're told at face value and questioning it and saying, you know, no, I belong here. I think that's a great one. Cool. Thanks for sharing, y'all. So here is, are we missing something? All right. Here's the little timeline that
we put together.
Everybody's
different.
It looks really neat. So how many of you have heard of UC Berkeley? Raise your hand.
You get extra credit.
Great. So I did a couple things in undergrad here. The time of my life, it was incredible. I'm happy to, in the Q&A, I'm happy to answer any questions about favorite eateries or places to hang out. Then right out of school, I went to a venture capital firm in Menlo Park called Kleiner Perkins. How many of you have heard of Kleiner Perkins? Raise your hand. A lot fewer. We got one over there. Hey, Niket. So Kleiner Perkins is a venture capital firm that invests in all types of startups, from early stage to late stage. Some of their marquee investments in the early days was Google, Amazon, Genentech. Genentech was actually, I think, incubated in the basement of Kleiner Perkins early on.
Aviv,
but that's,
I'm gonna pull you over
back
to
here.
the carpet again.
But that's where I was exposed to, the most brilliant minds and startup founders in the world. I call it my kind of accelerated MBA, where I learned a ton as a venture capitalist. I then moved to the operating side at a startup. I joined Ring. How many of you have heard of Ring or Amazon? Raise your hand. All right, who can describe what Ring does? Claire did a great job earlier, but I'm going to call on someone. Go ahead.
Video doorbell.
Video doorbell. Okay, anyone else? That's right, but anyone else? Technology and security, great. And then Ring was acquired by Amazon about a year after I joined. Who can tell me what Amazon does? Go ahead. Logistics. In general, logistics. You're not wrong. What else? AWS, which is Amazon Web Services, which controls most of the cloud, most of the internet that we consume. What else does Amazon do? Twitch. Streaming services for gaming, etc. Anyone order packages from Amazon? No? Great. Yeah, had a bunch of different roles while I was at Ring. When we were part of Amazon, I also stayed within the Ring team there. Like Claire said, Ring was able to grow a lot and maintain its autonomy as a brand, even being within Amazon, which doesn't always happen with acquisitions. I'm happy to talk about that. But during 2017 to 2022 was, I call it going from startup to end up. So, kind of experiencing the world of a startup, scrappy, hustling, not having a lot of resources, and then ending up at an end up like Amazon, where most people that's a type of company that a lot of founders want to end up at. And now I'm the president of Skylight. How many of you have heard of Skylight? Raise your hand.
You may not
My
know
friends,
that you've
only
heard
my
of
friends.
Skylight.
Okay, you've heard of Skylight. Can I call on you?
Isn't it the frame that a lot of people have for digital photos?
Yeah, digital photo frame company. Yep. So that's one thing. Do you want to say anything else? Personal story?
Well, yeah, I do have a personal story. So my nephew got it for my mother, who is 92 and doesn't know how to use pretty much anything, but we can send pictures to her. She lives overseas. And so I didn't even realize that until we were talking. Then I'm like, oh, we have a Skylight.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful because for different generations or people who are afar, it's really easy to send pictures, and it's a little bit easier for them to look at than Instagram or, I don't know, TikTok or whatever.
Yeah. So who else has heard of Skylight? That was great. Who else? Niket. I'm cheating here. I seeded some people. Family operating system. Tell me more.
A way for families to kind of communicate and organize amongst each other without it being overly technical.
Cool. So Skylight sells digital picture frames, which are those little it looks like a picture frame, but it's digital, and you can send photos to it from your phone from anywhere in the world. It's a great gift for grandma, as we heard, but also we create touchscreen family calendars for families to be able to interact. Those old kind of whiteboard calendars that sit in the kitchen, or those big paper calendars that use Sharpie to mark up. So this is a digital version of that, and it connects to all your existing calendar systems, Google, Outlook, Apple, etc. And it really organizes family life in a way that makes it easy for kids, parents, nannies, etc., caregivers to all interact with this one physical product that kind of organizes the home, chores, meal planning, etc. Cool. And then I do some nonprofit board stuff on the side. So this is the nice slide that we created together. Now I'm going to make it ugly. this is the reality of what this career looks like so far. So my first job out of college actually wasn't in venture capital. It was in management consulting. And no shade on anyone who's looking to go into consulting. I don't think I was smart enough to really do it. But I just didn't enjoy it. I found myself going into work every day, and the projects I was working on had nothing to do with the things I was interested in and the things I was reading about. I was just reading about startups all day, and none of my day was focused on startups. And so within 3 months, I just decided to talk to all my friends who I went to Cal with, ask them what they were up to. And one of them, who was a classmate of mine from Cal, was working at this venture capital firm, Kleiner Perkins, which typically venture capital firms don't hire kids right out of school. But luckily, just right place, right time, they were looking for younger people to make the firm more relevant for younger entrepreneurs. At the time when I graduated long ago in 2013, Snapchat was just getting started, so Evan Spiegel, who went to Stanford, he dropped out to start Snapchat. So all these kind of new big products were coming out of undergrad, and venture capital firms didn't really know how to get in touch with these young students who were founding companies, and so they wanted to bridge that divide a little bit. I'm supposed to be here, and so I talked to a couple folks at Kleiner Perkins, and we made up a role that didn't ever exist before. And they hired me as an intern first, and then within 3 months, it became a full-time thing. And then I spent 4 years learning a lot. Then in venture capital, I think after about 4 years of sitting on the investor side of the house, I was meeting all these entrepreneurs who were just like obsessed with building their one thing, their one product or service that they were trying to bring to the world. And I remember this meeting where I was meeting with a cybersecurity founder who was, he had spent a decade of his life working in the NSA. And then he started a company. And it was all about, he was trying to basically solve the world's phishing problems, phishing attacks that happen in normal emails every day. And I remember sitting across the table from him and thinking, wow, I feel so dumb right now. This guy spent 20 years of his life dedicated to like fighting cyber, attacks. He knows everything about his space. I'm 3 years out of Cal. I don't know what I'm talking about. Like, I have no right to be deciding whether or not this guy deserves a $5 million check from the firm that I was working at. And so I spoke to a lot of the investors at the firm, and most of them were former operators. Most of them were founders or had built a company or had operated within a company. And they all said, if you want to be an incredible investor one day, you should probably learn how to operate and see if you're any good at it. Ring was one of the companies we invested in. So like Claire mentioned, yes, Ring started as a video doorbell company, but the mission of the company was to be a neighborhood security company. So not just to show you who's at your front door, or who's stealing your packages, or what time your kids are coming home at night past curfew. It was about how do we actually shift the mentality of home security from being reactive, like you only find out about it once somebody's broken into your house, to proactive, to something that you can anticipate or prevent from happening in the first place, either through deterrence because someone knows they're being recorded, or by being able to say, hey, I'm here, don't come near my door, because you can speak to the person through the camera. So I believed in this mission of kind of proactive security and reimagining an entire industry that had not been reimagined for decades. And so the company was based in LA. I flew down to LA. I met with the whole team there. It was an early startup, so they didn't really have a job for me. I didn't really know if I was good at anything yet. And we made up a job after kind of like Josh was talking about, the persistence. I just kept telling them what I liked, what I thought I could do well. And then after, I think, like 5 or 6 rounds with the founder and CEO, he's just like, all right, you're hired. We'll figure out where you're going to add value. And it was an amazing journey since then. I'll talk a little bit about it, about what I did. I just want to say, from venture capital to Ring, I took a big pay cut. And I remember like thinking that was a bad decision for my career. I thought it was going to hurt me financially long term, and all my friends were like making more money as the years went on, and I was like taking, I remember it was $20,000 pay cut to join a ring. And I called Niket, who's actually sitting over there, and I asked him, what would you do? And he told me, think of it as a $20,000 bet on yourself. He said, would you bet $20,000 on yourself? And I said yes. And so that's how I thought of it. I didn't think of it as a pay cut. I thought of it as a $20,000 bet on me learning an entire new skill set and potentially unlocking an entire new career path for myself, which I ended up doing. And so every time I took a pay cut, I thought of it as an investment, not as a cost, which was a really powerful lesson. And I did the same thing I realized after about 6 years at Amazon and Ring, I was ready to move on. And then when I joined Skylight, same thing. Took a pay cut, bet on myself. Can I do this again at a different company so that instead of 2 hands going up when I ask if you've heard about it, we'll get the whole room raising their hands at the end. So the 2 lessons here is everything in red was a job that never existed before I had it. So back to this idea of being an entrepreneur within existing organizations, like that's how you do it. You find value and then you meet that value with your energy. The second is that any resume, any LinkedIn profile that you see, it's usually not as neat as it appears. And so I would just encourage you when you see somebody who has like all these impressive accolades and titles and their career looks like only this, it's not. It's usually very messy, it takes twists and turns. And so I think I have a picture to show this. Who knows the game Chutes and Ladders? This is the career. This is it. So you take a couple steps forward, then you find a chute and you go down a couple notches, but then there's a ladder right next to it that gets you to a nonlinear growth, and you get to skip a couple levels. That's exactly how I feel I would describe my last 12 years of work and of building. And I think this is actually the entrepreneur's journey in a board game. Okay, story number 1. Cool?
Yeah, and so just so you all know, the idea is that Aviv is going to tell 4 stories. And after each story, and as he's going through, think of questions. Because I don't know whether you're going to do this or not, but I was hoping, just like a game show host or something like that, you'd be like going up and down the aisle. So be prepared to ask questions right afterwards. I think it's kind of helpful because then it's fresh in your minds.
Cool. So 4 stories. We'll see how many we get through, and we'll do questions after each one. So this is story number 1. Who knows who that man is to the left? Anyone?
Gore. It's Al Gore.
That's Al Gore, former Vice President Al Gore. He was actually a partner at the venture capital firm I was working at. So I was hanging out with people like that oftentimes, and I decided to quit that job, take a pay cut, and move to this little startup in Santa Monica that was building video doorbells. In the middle here, that's my grandmother. I believed in this. She's one of my favorite people in the world, by the way. She passed away a couple years ago. But I believed in this idea of being able to build hardcore technology for regular people, and ideally, 80-something-year-olds. If an 85-year-old grandma can understand the value of this tech product, it means you've built something really useful. And my grandma didn't care about the technology that enabled the video doorbell to work. She just cared, did she feel safer when she used it, which is a really powerful insight. And so I kind of became obsessed with this idea of kind of the intersection of the physical and the digital world, and being able to bridge that gap for people who don't actually care about the underlying tech stack that's being used or the latest AI model that it's using or anything. They just care about, how does this thing make my life a little bit better, a little bit safer, a little bit easier, a little bit more delightful? So that was kind of the premise behind that. Now this guy on the right this is the story. So as you all know, I joined Ring. I didn't really have a clear job. I was doing special projects for the president at the time. And one of the things that the founder kept talking about was this idea of building neighborhood security, a network effect around the doorbells that they were selling. So, for every Ring doorbell that's sold, it's taking footage of, it's a street-facing camera. It's taking footage of what's going on in the neighborhood. And what we found was that when crimes or safety events happen to a neighborhood, they almost never happen in isolation at the individual house level. So if somebody's stealing a package from your house, they're likely stealing a package from your house as well. If a fire is raging in a neighborhood, it's not affecting one home typically. It's usually affecting the whole street or the whole neighborhood. In LA, many, many thousands of homes, most recently. And so what we found is this idea of there's power in the network behind the devices and not just the devices themselves. And so what we found was a lot of customers were sharing their Ring videos, like a package thief or a lost pet or just different videos of things happening in the neighborhood. They were sharing it with their Facebook groups. Problem is that your Facebook social graph is your social graph. It's not a geographic graph. So if you're sharing a video of something that happened in Los Angeles with a Facebook friend who lives in San Francisco or Berkeley, it's not really that useful. It is useful, however, if you can share that video with somebody who lives 2 doors down from you, so they can know, wow, there's a package thief that's kind of casing the neighborhood, or there's a fire that's happening, we all better evacuate. And you can actually get that information in more real time than any news outlet that exists on the planet, because news outlets don't communicate at that hyper-local of a level. So this was the idea. The idea was, how do we figure out how to get everybody who has a Ring device? We were starting to get decent saturation at the neighborhood level. How do you get people behind these devices to talk to one another? You have to build a social network, some sort of app to do it. Again, it was an idea that it was one of the main reasons we invested in Ring when I was on the venture side. But no one was really working on it. It was still an idea. This guy over here is a 7'1" tall engineer. He's much taller than he looks, and I'm not that tall. I'm almost half the size. He was the one engineer in the whole company that was working on this idea of building this social network at the hyperlocal level. No one else was working on it with him. It was kind of a side project. And at the time, this was pre-COVID, so we were in the office. So I went over to his desk. He was eating a bunch of sushi, so I took a picture of this because I wanted to capture the founding moment of this thing. And I asked him what he was working on, and he explained it to me exactly like I just explained it to you. He's like, I'm trying to basically create a news feed for people who have Ring cameras within a certain geofence. And I want them to be able to share these videos with each other so that they can alert one another of things happening before they happen to every home in the neighborhood. And then I heard the CEO and the founder talking a lot about this idea, but there was no one who was working on it outside of this engineer. And so after a couple weeks of learning more about it and hearing more about how important this concept was to the company, and also learning that no one was really working on it outside of this engineer named Alex, I pitched. I said, "Can I work on this project? Can I do it with Alex? I'll own it." And I learned that was product management. That I was auditioning to become the product manager of this app, of this feature that we were building. I didn't know the first thing about product management, so I found the closest product manager I could. I asked him to teach me and whiteboard out, what does product management mean? How does it work? What am I supposed to do? And he gave me a crash course, and then we were off to the races. We launched the app, I think 3 months later, and then about a year after launching, we had 10 million monthly active users, people who were using it to really just alert each other about things like wildfires in the neighborhood. I lost my pet. Can you help find my pet? So there were thousands and thousands of pets that were found because of this thing. There were people who evacuated their homes due to fires long before they were told to. There were people who were woken up in the middle of the night by alerts because of things like safety incidents that were happening in the neighborhood, and they could evacuate safely. So it was a really amazing kind of neighborhood security product that ended up becoming a differentiator to Amazon when they bought us a year later. They were like, there's other doorbell companies, there's other video doorbell companies out there now, there's other security camera companies out there now, but there's no company that's building a network effect around these devices to make it a really valuable asset for the world. And so that's a little bit about the founding story there. I'll pause and take some questions.
Yeah. Aviv's gonna.
I'm gonna walk around.
Repeat your questions and walk around.
Cool. I'm coming. So who has a question about this first story? Go ahead. What did I do in the company before product management? Great question. What's your name? Evan. Evan asked, so what I did, I was doing special projects for the president, which was a fancy way of saying I was doing everything and nothing. So the president was hired 6 months before I was to kind of professionalize the company. So a lot of founders don't think of themselves as great business people. Not all, but some don't. So Jamie Siminoff, who founded Ring, who's still a close mentor of mine, he always thought himself as a chief inventor, not a chief executive. He didn't think of himself as a business guy. So he hired somebody to be his business kind of counterpart to help make the company, more serious, right? Like, how do we not just tinker in a garage? Ring was founded in a garage. How do we not just do that? How do we make it really legitimate so that an acquirer like Amazon is interested in buying us or, interested in growing with us? So for the first 6 months, I worked on a lot of different projects that were important to him. One of them was building out the subscription business. For those of you who don't know, Ring, with every Ring sold, there's also a subscription element to it to save the recordings to the cloud, all that stuff. That ended up being a huge kind of important piece of the business that actually created a lot of the value that it has today. So I helped build that on the side with him and a couple engineers. So I was learning a little bit of product management on the side, but it was always informal. It was always like, oh, this is what product management is, just somebody with business ideas or customer ideas working with an engineer. That's pretty cool. So that's what I was doing. What else? Go ahead. What's your name? Sanjita. Yes. Okay. So I'll try to. So the question was, okay, what is product management? Like, if I learned a crash course in product management, like, what did I take away from it? At a high level, product management, what I learned in that crash course was that a product manager's job is to define what you're building and why you're building it, and it's the engineering team's job to figure out how to build it and when to deliver it by, right? So take Sanjita. What's your favorite app on your phone? Amazon's your favorite app. Great, great. Amazon's your favorite app on your phone. So the Amazon app has a lot of different components to it. There's a search function where you search for a product. Let's say you want to buy, I don't know, what did I buy recently? I brought floss picks. I like to floss my teeth with these floss picks. So when I search Amazon's search bar, okay, I want the best floss picks that are minty or whatever. You can put that in. That's a whole product team that's focused on what does the experience feel like when Sanjita types in what she's looking for in the Amazon app. And then what's the experience of, okay, once I tap an item that I like, okay, what's the checkout experience if I want to buy it? How do I see the price? Once I decide to buy it, how am I alerted about the status of my shipment? What is the email communication flow updating me on how close my shipment is to being delivered at my doorstep? Which then, by the way, is when Ring will notify you and say, hey, somebody's at your door and and you can pick up your package. So, so product managers think about what that experience should feel like and look like, and it's their job to talk to customers and learn what works, what doesn't work. It's their job to talk to designers and figure out, okay, here's 5 different screens of what this experience could look like, which one resonates, which one is easiest to use and the least complicated. And then they work with engineers to build it. And so product managers sometimes have a technical background, sometimes they don't. I didn't have a technical background, and I still kind of learned along the way because I always leaned on a really technical kind of leader to be my counterpart. Go ahead. No, so I wasn't technical. So the question was, were the product managers at Ring all technical? No, because I wasn't technical, so by default, no. But it depends on what the product is, right? So for much more technical products, like there was a whole team that was building computer vision technology for the cameras. There's a lot of work that went into package detection. So you know, for the who knows or has a Ring in their home or in the home that their parents live in? Raise your hand. So one of the biggest challenges of Ring is notification overload. Like if your Ring doorbell is facing the street and thousands of people and cars are whizzing by all day long, you're going to get a notification every time that happens, and you're going to ultimately end up ignoring all your notifications, and it's going to render the product pretty useless. And so one of the things that a product team would work on, for example, at Ring, is reducing that notification overload by trying to get smart about what they notify you about. So people detection would be a big feature so that you can discern between a person walking by your house or a car whizzing by, or package detection, so you can discern whether or not somebody's leaving a package at your doorstep or whether or not it's the mailman or something like that. So, those are more technical products, so those would probably have more technical product managers. Versus me, I was building a social network. I was building an app. So I didn't really need to have that technical background. Cool. I'll take one more question, and then we'll move on. Go ahead.
I really like how you've been able to kind of confidently jump from many different areas that are kind of related in terms of skill set, but not really directly like a traditional linear path. What's your secret to selling yourself when you want to get from one thing to another thing you find interesting?
Okay, so the question was, what's the secret? I don't know that there is a secret, but what's the secret to selling myself when I want to jump from one domain to another in my career? I feel like you read my slides earlier because that's the next. This is it. This is the secret sauce. So you're all Berkeley students, so I know you love a Venn diagram here. So I built one for you. It's really beautiful. So this is it. So I think there's 3 circles to oversimplify the world into this. There's 3 circles. There's what gives me energy, right? So like what gets me excited is question number 1. If I'm excited about something, for example, I was excited about the idea of building a hyper-local network that was centered around crime and safety. I was really excited about that mission, that vision, that idea. So it gave me energy. So I wanted to spend my time there. But if it just gives me energy alone and no one else is excited about it, it's probably a bad place to spend your time. So the second circle is high impact stuff. That's where you start to pay attention to what also matters in the organization to the most important people in the organization. So I kept hearing the founder talk about how this concept of the Neighbors app was the most important thing strategically that Ring would work on in the next year. And so if he kept repeating it, I was like, this must be important. Oh, by the way, and I happen to enjoy the idea and be really energized by it. So that's so far so good. And then the third circle is really important. And this is like where being an entrepreneur within an existing organization really matters. Because it has to be something that's either poorly owned, so the ownership of it is like half-baked, or the person who's kind of focusing on it is doing it as a side hustle or a side part of their job, or not owned at all, meaning like there's nobody focused on it, everyone talks about it being important, it gives me energy, but like literally no one's working on it. That's a perfect kind of formula for, all right, that's where I should be spending my next year or my next 6 months or whatever, proving it out. So I just believe in any organization you ever join, there's always going to be high impact stuff that not enough people are working on or nobody's working on that also can give you energy. And I would encourage you to find in any organization you join, that's what you got to find. Is like, where can I add unique value that isn't being created by somebody already? And hopefully that unique value also aligns with the most important business objectives for the year or for the company.
Can I just add something?
Yeah.
So, it seems very simple, and you got these 3 circles, but there's like a special sauce, like a little fairy dust that gets sprinkled on. And if you listen to Aviv, he's just so passionate about it. And I think that being able to communicate that is infectious. And so while these 3 circles are nice, just having that passion about it and convincing others and infecting others, doesn't really sound that great when I'm saying it now, but in a positive way, is really important.
No, it's right. I think it's a good point. I think no one's going to give you that shot to work on that thing unless they truly believe in their heart that you're going to be able to execute on it or do it well. And so that's it. I think that is an important element or fairy dust here, is that and that's why the my energy side is so important, because I've found in my career, and it's actually a company motto that we have now, is we allow people to follow their energy. Turns out if people have energy for something, they're going to work really damn hard at it. And they're going to usually try to crush it at that thing because it's a passion. It's something they care about. It's something they lose sleep over. It's something they work nights and weekends on. And so it's selfishly for the business, it's actually a good business strategy to let people follow their energy. But it's also an amazing way to get people excited to stick around for a while and to continue to invent and invest in being at the organization you're a part of. So the my energy, if it truly gives you energy, hopefully the passion will be a byproduct of that. So just a couple takeaways from the first story. One was I knew when it was time to leave venture capital. Again, I was hanging out with Al Gore. I was meeting all these really amazing entrepreneurs. It was a pretty cushy job, honestly. And so a lot of people said I was kind of crazy for, going to a small startup that no one had heard of at the time, like a doorbell company. I mean, the founder was he pitched to Shark Tank and he was laughed off the screen because they thought the idea of video doorbells was stupid. And so folks thought I was kind of crazy, but I knew it was time. I knew I'd saturated my learning. I wasn't learning anymore, and I wanted to learn what it meant to build something and to see if I was any good at it. So I think knowing when to move on is a really important kind of takeaway in anyone's career, because you never know what's behind that next door that you're going to open. The second is this idea of creating unique value by working on high impact stuff that no one's owning. Ideally something that gives you energy. The third is a really important piece, which is I think the most magical moments in my career can be attributed to unplanned serendipitous moments that happened in between meetings. So I know we live in a kind of post-COVID world right now where a lot of companies are remote first and you're doing things on Zoom, and as you think about the careers or the jobs you're going to have first, it's going to be very tempting perhaps to start at a job that is fully remote and you can work from anywhere in the world, and all you have to do is kind of just do your work on the laptop and call it a day. And I would argue that I would not be where I am today, and I would not have accomplished any of the things you saw on the board so far if it hadn't been for these chance meetings after a meeting, where it's the debrief after the meeting that everyone's in the hallway just talking about what their ideas are for making that thing happen, or overhearing the CEO talk about why the Neighbors app matters to him, but that no one's working on it. For me, there's so much magic in serendipity, and so I guess this is my one piece of advice. The one advice that I have all day today is try to spend as much time in person with the people you're working with as possible, because magic happens there. I'm not saying don't join a remote first company. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying magic happens at these physical moments where everyone's tired and there's no more agenda to be talked about in a meeting, and you're just putting ideas on a whiteboard and jamming. And so, by the way, I think college is like the best time for serendipity. I think that's one of the reasons I was obsessed with my 4 years here. But I would encourage you to carry that magic through in your careers afterwards. And then the last one was a Niket insight, which is anytime you're taking a pay cut to start a new opportunity and learn something new, think of that as an investment in yourself and not as a cost. So just, this is a scary picture of Jeff Bezos. I don't know why I chose it, but
I think they're all fairly scary.
they're all fairly scary, yeah. Fair. So I think, this was just, look, when Ring was bought by Amazon for $1 billion, sounds like, okay, this is a great exit and it's time to kind of cash out and leave. And I didn't see it that way. I saw it as an opportunity to actually learn how, I think you said Amazon's a logistics company, how the best logistics company in the world does logistics, right? I wanted to learn, how do you operate at Amazon scale? Few companies on the planet get to operate at that level of scale. I wanted to learn it and see it and be a part of it. And so I spent the next 4.5 years scaling within Amazon and learning how Amazon systems worked. And to this day, I've cherry-picked things from Amazon that I really love in terms of how they operate, and I've rejected the things that I don't like, and that's kind of the beauty of it. So that's why this slide is there. Those 4.5 years after the acquisition were hyper learning and hyper growth for me as an individual, and learning how to be an entrepreneur within an even bigger organization. Second story. Why I fell in love with consumer tech. So I talked a little bit about it. If I start walking around, is this going to annoy people here who have to turn around? We'll try it once, see how it goes.
Oh, I like the heads going back and forth, but not enough. I think it's good to walk around because,
we'll try.
Those poor people who
I
are
just need to
sitting in
get
the
my
back.
blood flowing a little bit. All right, cool. So why I fell in love with consumer tech. So as I said, with the photo of my grandma, I'm obsessed with this idea of building hardcore technology for people who don't really care about the technology at all and who just care about the value you're unlocking. And there's something magical about, Professor Howell talked about her mother uses a skylight digital picture frame, right? To kind of see memories of loved ones that are sent to her frame every day. And she gets to wake up and see these photos every day. The fact that a 90-something-year-old can use a smart home technology in their home is an incredible thing. And so there's a lot of hard work that goes into making that really simple for a 92-year-old. My favorite customer quote from a digital picture frame customer is, she wrote on Amazon, it was an Amazon review, and she said, "I'm a 98-year-old woman. I do not know how to use my microwave, but I know how to use my skylight picture frame." Which is a funny thing. It's wow, this thing is so useful to her and easy for her to use that she can unlock this value through this smart home technology product, even though she doesn't think of it as a smart home product. She thinks of it as a picture frame that shares memories with her. And so, yeah, I think what's cool about consumer tech is no one's grading you on how cool the technology is that you're using. People are just grading you on how valuable the thing is that you're doing for their lives and how much you're improving their lives. So I believe in this idea. Who's heard of the smart home before? Smart home things.
How can not everybody's hand be up?
So smart home is a thing, a product that lives in your home that's connected to the internet in some way. Maybe smart home because it's just natural. It's just ubiquitous now, right? But everything's connected. And so it's not even a thing anymore. When I was graduating college, it wasn't obvious that everything is connected to the internet. Now it kind of is, so I get it. But Ring was perceived to be a smart home company. Oh, it's a Wi-Fi connected doorbell. People saw Skylight, they said that's a Wi-Fi connected picture frame. That's a Wi-Fi connected touchscreen calendar for the family. I hate the term smart home. I think it's bullshit. People don't want to live in a smart home. They want to live in a safer home. That's why they bought Ring. They want to live in a better home, a a home that's filled with more family memories. That's why they buy a digital picture frame. They want to live in a less stressful home. That's why they buy a skylight calendar to organize their family's life in a single place so that everyone can be on the same page. So starting with the value and not starting with the underlying technology that enables that value is the definition of consumer technology and why I became obsessed with it and in love with it.
Can you just say that one more time? We do have a lot of people who are building stuff. And it's the tendency is to want to say what something does and how it's built. Can you just say what you said before?
Yeah.
Again.
So I think you have to anchor to and start with the value that you're bringing to people's lives and not the underlying technology that enables that value, right? So again, starting with the why, right? Like Ring was invented not to be this Wi-Fi connected doorbell. It was invented to make people feel safer. And so you have to start with safety and work backwards from there and figure out, okay, what technology do I need to enable that safety that didn't exist before? So that's the type of thing that I anchor to. So these are just a couple stories, and I mentioned them already, but so, again, technology delivers the value, it's not the value itself. So Ring, it was all about delivering this idea of presence. So again, if you have a Ring doorbell or a video camera that's always on in front of your home, and by the way, I always apologize to younger folks who grew up with Ring in their lives because if I had Ring, if Ring existed when I was in high school, I would have gotten in a lot more trouble. And so I apologize for that. But it creates this sense of presence and kind of persistent presence that's always there. So we always said, with Ring, you're always home. So even if you're away from home, you're always home. And so the anecdote that I want to share, this was actually a cool story for me. It was 2018. It was right after Amazon had bought Ring. And there were like a lot of wildfires in Los Angeles, which obviously just recently it was the worst wildfire in the history of the country, and there was a lot of devastation that happened there. But in 2018, there was another much smaller scale fire, and when we looked at the data, we saw that there were about 30,000 of our customers who lived in the fire zone, and they were using the Neighbors app, the one that we built like 6 months prior, to alert one another about whether or not their homes were still standing. So there was an evacuation notice, and everyone was gone from their neighborhoods, and the local news wasn't reporting on whether or not the homes were still standing because it was unsafe. But a lot of Ring cameras were still recording somehow. And so people were getting live feeds of their homes, burning or not, through this hyper-local community that was updating each other at the block level, literally at the block level, about what was happening. And it was this amazing kind of thing that we didn't even expect, where it's like natural disaster happens, and all of a sudden people are talking about whether or not their homes are still standing in real time because of this app that we built. And so we didn't there's a lot of technology that went into building the app. Who cares? At the end of the day, people were able to know in real time whether or not their home was still safe to go back to, whether or not it was still standing, whether or not their pet was still alive. These were all things that they were able to do just from that moment. The cool story was when I was presenting what was happening in real time, Jeff Bezos walked into the meeting because he was visiting our headquarters. And so I had to explain this whole thing to Jeff Bezos in that moment. And it was this weird moment for me in my life. And it was fun.
So wait, hold on. Did Jeff Bezos ask you any questions that you remember?
I think he this was right after the acquisition. And again, one of the big reasons they were excited about Ring was because we went beyond just the commodity doorbell and video camera and things that most other security companies were building. We were building this idea of a network effect and a hyper-local, safety network. So no, he didn't ask any questions, but he was just he nodded his head and he was excited. He thought that was very cool. So anyway, that was the moment. With Skylight, also same thing. I always like to say I was a doorbell salesman for the first part of my career, and now I'm a picture frame salesman and a calendar salesman. So that's basically in a nutshell what I do for a living. So with digital picture frames, I think the aha moment from a customer that I had was hearing from a customer who said they have dementia and seeing pictures of their family and friends that are sent to their picture frame every day. They wake up every morning, they go to their frame, and family and friends have sent new photos to the frame. And it says it helps them keep their memories alive, but it also keeps their memory, literally. Like it's helpful to see faces and do the name recall for that customer. And it was an amazing thing. And so again, a 90-something-year-old with dementia who's like seeing value in this product that we built, which is a really cool thing. And then with the Skylight calendar, you might think like, wow, it's just a screen with a calendar on it. It can't be that interesting. Actually, it turns out that when you visualize the schedule in a central place in the home that everyone has access to, that's not stuck on your phone, that's stuck in your pocket, that's hidden behind one of the 15 apps that you have opened, but it's ambiently present in a physical space in the home, in the kitchen, in the living room, the place with the most foot traffic typically, it can actually like get everyone on the same page in a really powerful way. So one mom said, being able to see the calendar and the schedule of the day reduced her son's anxiety to a point where he was actually discharged from the psychiatrist just because he no longer held that anxiety every morning, not knowing what's next, what can I expect next. He could see it in a visual space. And so these are the types of stories. It's kind of like my why and like why do I do this work? These are the things that we try to unlock, and this is really the product. The product is the value that we're bringing to these people. It's not the widgets or the pixels or the code that goes into delivering each one of these devices. Cool. So this is kind of the summary. So what are the takeaways, right? Focus on the value, not the tech. Safer home, calmer home, not smarter home. There's big business and big impact in reimagining unloved analog systems in our lives. So as I just said, I'm a doorbell salesman, a picture frame salesman, and a calendar salesman. These are all things that exist in our normal homes that we grew up in probably, that were reimagined and built into hundreds of millions or billion-dollar businesses. And so I would just encourage you, as you think about what do you want to build in this world, if it's a consumer thing, you don't have to look too far. Just look at the environment you're in and look at the thing that maybe annoys you a little bit and the problem that you want to solve, and start there, and it'll probably be a good business idea as a result. The third thing I noticed is that simplicity is a differentiator. So again, this would not have been bought by these products wouldn't have been bought by millions of people if it wasn't super, super easy and simple to use. And so when you think about like building hardcore technology, a lot of times it can be complex. And so this actually goes back to this idea that I learned from Berkeley of simplifying complex things in big, daunting spaces. The same is true in the world of consumer technology. Like if you're simple and easy to use, you will be differentiated from the competition almost every time. And the last most important is that you don't really have a product or a company if you can't make people feel something. I think like my favorite thing to do is to go to like a dinner party with a bunch of parents who typically will use the Skylight calendar or hang out at a family gathering and there's some grandparents there, and their eyes will light up and they'll talk about how that one thing like is their favorite thing to look at every day in the morning, and it's changed their lives, and here's why. So customers who you can build an emotional connection with will generally reward you with their dollar over time. And so if you can find something that gets people's eyes to light up, then you're probably onto something.
Aviv, we have about a good 10 minutes left.
Cool.
So I don't know how what you'd like to do.
Great.
You've got choices.
Let's do, the next two are pretty quick. So I'll just run through those, and then we'll open up the rest of the time for questions. Cool?
Cool.
So this is just the story of an audacious mission. So we talked a lot about Ring and Skylight. When we talk about like what did these companies invent, somebody mentioned Ring invented the video doorbell. yes, that's true, but that actually wasn't like the real insight. That wasn't the real invention. The real invention was the mission. And the same is true for Skylight. So the mission of Ring is to make neighborhoods safer. And the mission for Skylight is to make technology that brings families together. So Ring started as a smart video doorbell company, and Skylight started as a digital picture frame company. Both of those companies would no longer exist today if that's all they did. If those were the only two products that those companies had built, they would not exist anymore, because in consumer technology, there's a lot of competition and a lot of copycats and a lot of companies who, I'm going to move over here, and a lot of companies who really just, they'll just make it cheaper, better, faster, and they'll undercut the first mover who created that category, and that'll be it, and that'll be the end of it. And so you have to continue to invent against something. And so if you have a mission that is ambitious yet impossible to achieve, I call it, it's like asymptotic. Like making neighborhoods safer is never truly achievable fully. It's just, you're never going to get there. You can get close, but never fully. And same thing with making technology that brings families together. You're never going to really achieve that. That's not a quantifiable thing that you can just say, like, I'm done. But the fact that they're impossible to achieve but ambitious means that you can continue to invent against them for decades, right? And so Ring, to invent against the mission of making neighborhoods safer, that's why we decided to build the Neighbors app. That's why we decided to do smart security lights so that people could feel safer. Like, the movie Home Alone, where he just like pretends like, everyone's there and he turns on the lights on and off. So we built a whole product line that was all around like smart lighting that could have timers on them based on whether or not you were home or away. And so it created that sense of presence. These are inventions and these are products that evolved over time that were all inventing against the mission and not against the original product. And so what's also powerful about a mission is that it gets customers passionate, it gets the team passionate, vendors, people who are working with you, like retail partners, et cetera, get excited. It helps you develop more products because you're like, oh, well, we can't continue to invent against the doorbell. We got to invent against this making neighborhoods safer mission. It's a lot bigger, it's a lot meatier. And so I just want to say, I think a mission is a powerful thing. So I think any organization that you join or start, I would encourage you to look for what's the mission that everyone's inventing against and marching towards, because if it's not super clear, odds are that there's not going to be a ton of longevity to that company or that product line, et cetera. And then this is the fourth lesson. So as I said earlier, being contrarian is a hard thing to do, especially when a bunch of people who you respect are telling you not to do a thing that you want to do. So the story here is when I left Ring, after 6 years of being at Ring, things were going really well. I was managing a team of 150 people, which is I think about like half the size of this room, is that right?
Yep.
Right? So about half of y'all. My team was responsible for like, I don't know, $500 million worth of revenue for the company every year. It was like big job, and I felt cool. But I was like not motivated anymore. I was like, I'm not inventing new things. I'm kind of tinkering at the edges. I'm not building unique value, nonlinear value anymore. And so I decided to leave. And I had a conversation with the founder, Jamie, who was a mentor. And I told him, I said, hey, I think it's time. I think I got to go and I got to try this new thing called Skylight. Turns out he bought one for his mom like a year before, and he's like, it's an incredible product. But then he's like, what else do they do? I said, oh, they build this digital calendar product for families. And he's like, oh, that's a bad idea. I don't get it. Like, why can't you just put it on an iPad and call it a day? Or you have your phone. What do you need a display in the household for? And so he told me, he's like, when you join, you should kill that product line. It's not going to be successful. And I joined anyway, and I believed in the product. I thought I lived in a house that had a chaotic calendar, like with a whiteboard and sticky notes all over it. And I was like, this is a problem that needs to be solved, and I believe in it. And then joining Skylight, I joined a company that had no investors, fully bootstrapped, which was cool, but like also scary because it's like if we don't hit our numbers in Q4, we might not live to fight another day, and there's no one to bail us out. So like it was this contrarian idea of joining a startup that had zero investors and like was only reinvesting its profits in itself. And so I still believed in it, and I did it. And what was cool is like the moment of vindication when like you prove everyone wrong, is like 2 years later, the Skylight calendar is now the best. It created a category of smart family calendaring. I think we got Time Best Invention of the Year award. We were on Good Morning America. We appear on a lot of Real Housewives of whatever, fill in the blank, Orange County, I think is that one. We're on CNBC. So there's a lot of these moments of like, holy smokes, the world is seeing what we're building and appreciating it. And again, I go back to that mom who said her kid's anxiety was reduced because of this product. And that's like the thing I anchor to is like, there's magic in that one anecdote. And if you just like focus on delivering against that one anecdote and try to replicate it as many times as possible, you could probably build a pretty big business. And Jamie, the founder of Ring, texted me a year after I joined, and he's like, "You were right, I was wrong." He saw a lot of parents in his kids' school had a group chat, and they were all raving about how Skylight Calendar had like changed their life and organized their household almost magically. And he's like, "Look, even he said, even I who invented the video doorbell that no one understood and no one understood why it mattered, even I miss things sometimes." And so it's this good moment of like, if you have a conviction about something, even if people are telling you it's probably not the right thing or wrong, not always, but sometimes like being that contrarian can actually lead to really, really cool things down the road. All right, and then I have a gift for you at the end. For those of you who want to buy digital picture frames for your grandparents or a smart family calendar, I got you a unique code.
Very nice Valentine's present.
Oh, yeah, it's a good Valentine's present. Really good Valentine's present. So feel free to use it. I think it'll expire in like a week, so try to use it before then if you'd like.
So I am curious. We have just a few minutes for questions, but who has questions? Yeah, I love seeing that. And before you go into the questions, I want to tell you all something. When you're telling somebody a story, the intent of the story is not to stupefy other people, but to start a dance, to start an interaction. And so I love seeing that you all have questions. We can probably take 1 or 2 questions now, but I am hoping that you all will come up and ask Aviv questions afterwards as well. And if you don't get a chance to, if someone wanted to reach out to you, could you be found easily?
Yes. What's the easiest one? Aviv@skylightframe.com.
That's pretty
Email
easy.
me. There you go.
Great. All right. Sorry. I'll let you all ask questions.
Josh.
Well, can I do this to you? Can I not have you ask? Because Josh, you answered before.
Oh yeah. Okay. If we have time after, we'll do yours after. Who hasn't? Yeah.
Do you think AI hardware is the future? Because the actual AI hardware projects are not that good. The user experiments are very bad. Like I can say like rabbits, it's terrible. You have human also. They raise more than 100 millions. But the user experiment is still not good.
Okay. So the question, sorry, I'll try to repeat it, which is AI hardware, is there a future in that? I think it goes back to the principles that I talked about, which is like start with the value. Like AI for AI's sake, you're just building tech for tech's sake. So maybe Silicon Valley like techies will love it, but that's not the market. Like you got to build for the population of the world. And so I believe like we use AI in our product all the time, but like we use it for real life use cases, right? And like you got to start with what is the need that you're trying to solve for the customer, and if AI can help us enable that, great. But starting with AI as the product, as the solution, I think it's wrong, and I just don't think that's how generational businesses are built.
One more.
Go ahead.
I want to ask, because you mentioned about the value is most important to the cost especially from the engineering school, they believe in tech is the like the really important things to change the world. So maybe there's some situation or there's a different like belief in this problem.
Yeah, good. I love it because you're challenging me, which is awesome. So what you're saying is, hey, like sometimes actually like focusing on the tech and inventing against the tech and inventing new, better tech, faster tech, et cetera, is the way you build a big business. You're totally right. I just think when I'm coming from a consumer tech point of view, if you're building an enterprise software that's all about efficiency, speed, and lower storage costs, then absolutely, right? Like, or faster AI processing, et cetera, then yeah, of course you have to start with that. But at the end of the day, you're still always delivering value to somebody. Even if you're selling to a big enterprise, like a big company, they're still a customer. So you have to work backwards from like, what problem do we need to solve for enterprises at large to make this thing into a business, right? There's a difference between inventing cool tech and having that tech become a big business, right? So if you want to continue to invent, you can do that. But if you want that tech to see, scale and reach millions of people in the world, you have to wrap it in some sort of customer value, whether or not that customer is a grandmother who's living in her apartment or a big company that you're trying to sell software to.
I think that you talking about value is this wonderful place for us to put just a little bit of a pause, a ... as people continue to ask you questions. I hope they'll come down. But your enthusiasm truly is infectious. And the lessons that you brought to this class are totally unique, and I appreciate it. And I hope you all join me in thanking Aviv with applause.